This is the Toprig S4, and it's probably one of the lightest and most budget-friendly sliders for content creators. Now, there's a lot of reviews about this slider, and let's be honest, most of these sliders were actually gifted to the people that reviewed them. I actually purchased this with my own money, and so I thought I'd share my first and honest impressions. Now, the reason I got interested in this slider was mostly because of the price. It's $350 compared to something like the Zeppin Micro 3, which I would say it's pretty comparable to, which is around $500. And that's without a motor. This includes a motor. It actually includes a lot more functionality than the Zeppin, but I've been eyeing the Zeppin for a long time, and honestly, I just don't think it's worth that extra cost. Plus, this slider offers one additional feature, which is the ability to do parallax, which I think is pretty awesome for a $350 slider. Now, one thing that was a bit misleading before I bought this slider is that it's not a manual slider. Sure, you can slide it manually, but you're always pushing against the motors, and that's something I like about the Zeppin. It gives you both the options. You can manually slide or you can use the motors, but with this one, it's motorized or nothing. So let's talk about build quality. I would say for the most part, it's really not that bad, but it's not that great either. The motor feels like something out of a $30 kid's toy. It sounds like it could break if you just push it too much. So definitely stick to the weight limits and don't overload it. And the buttons are just kind of cheap, and overall it just feels like it could fall apart at any moment. But in fairness, it's holding up so far and does what it's supposed to do. Now, I do like the mounting options, especially how they manage to let you pan and swivel without making it too expensive. And instead of a fancy rotating base, you just loosen the right and left nuts to get a kind of mock swivel. But just know it won't go 360 degrees, not even 180 degrees. And as for panning, it works well for me, but some reviewers complain that it doesn't slow down at the ends, but that's not a function I personally need. The only thing that bugged me about it is that when you pan, you have to go the full distance before returning unless you set an A and B point. Now, in terms of function, this slider is super simple to use. You just turn it on, you hit play, and that's pretty much it. If you want, you can set your A and B points, and there's also a button to repeat the motion. One thing you need to keep in mind, it doesn't come with a battery, so you're gonna need a Sony battery to power it, or you can plug it into a 5-volt adapter, which isn't included. But I found out that you can run it off a USB-C cable, so there's that option. Now, as for mounting, this thing is pretty versatile. You can pretty much set it on any tripod or any adapter. I personally just mount it directly to my tripod's quick release plate with a ball head on top, and it works fine just like that. Another cool feature that I haven't tested with this slider yet is the ability to have a shutter release. You can actually program the frame rate and the time just like an intervalometer for like a time lapse or astrophotography. And I personally think this is an awesome feature because of the potential to take time-lapse shots of the Milky Way. Unfortunately, both my Sony ZV-E1 and A6700 don't have micro USB, so I'm unable to use it as a remote shutter. But if you have a larger camera like the A7 IV or older models, it's gonna work just fine. But the fact that you can get a slider for this price and you can do time-lapse for astrophotography makes this an incredible deal if it's gonna work. I haven't tested it. I will try to as soon as I can, but I just don't have a camera that can test this functionality right now. All right, let's talk about the cons. This really is a great and easy to use slider, and the only things I don't like about it are that it doesn't act as a manual slider like it seemed like it had advertised that it did manual sliding. And the other thing I hate about it is that you have to calibrate it every single time you use it. I'm hoping this will be solved in a firmware update because this is a major inconvenience. I mean, seriously, like who wants to calibrate their slider every time they use it? So should you get this slider? Should you skip it? I would say this is a great slider if you're doing anything in a studio. If you're doing anything like professionally, or if you're doing weddings or anything like that, I would say you probably don't want this one just because of the build quality. But I mean, for the most part, it's probably gonna work, but you get what you pay for. So that's my first impression of the Toprig S4. It's not perfect, but for the price, it's a great slider that does what it's supposed to do. If you're looking for a slider that is budget friendly and easy to use, this might be worth checking out. So I'll leave links in the description below if you're interested in it. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one, and I hope you have a great day.